Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London, and today I'm looking at a book which has come to us from LexisNexis Family Law. We've reviewed this work in the past. It's an important practitioner's publication. It's called The International Family Law Practice. It's now in its 6th edition, and it's been written and edited by Professor David Hodson, OBE. Elizabeth was the lead writer in this particular instance of this review, and she's given the title of our review this: A Basic Point of Reference Across the Whole Field of International Family Law, now in a new 6th edition. And that's what you're getting. Let's have a look at the book first of all. It's not a big book, and by the way, it's lighter and it's smaller than it was. It was actually, the previous edition of our review was quite a lot bigger than this one, but this is the current one, the 6th edition. There's the spine, there's nothing on the back of it. If I go to the back, you'll see it's got the standard house style for LexisNexis Family Law. What you've got is paragraph numbering for the particular index references. It's not a big index. It's not as big as some indexes can be, and you'll see at the beginning of the index how it starts off, and again, as I said, paragraph numbering. The book runs to under 2,000 pages, unlike the red book Family Law Practice, which is 3,000, so it's quite a lot smaller. Let's have a look at the beginning of the book itself. As I say, it's not as big as it used to be. There is the actual front page, and you can see a lot of people involved in it. I can't mention them all by name, but Professor Hodson is the general editor, and he says, while every care has been taken to ensure the accuracy of this work, no responsibility for loss or damage occasioned to any person acting or refraining from action as a result of any statement in it can be accepted by the authors, editors or publishers. So you know where you are. And I'm glad, because otherwise people say, oh, well, I read it in there, so it must be right. Doesn't work like that, but you'd be amazed what some clients will do, and I'm sure I'm speaking to many people who will know exactly what I mean. There's the actual detail about the book there. The pages are very thin. There's a foreword. Do read the foreword, because that sets out where we are at the moment. The foreword's actually been written by Nigel Lowe, and it's dated June 2021. I'm recording this in the early autumn of 2021, but it's, as it says right at the beginning, this book is a huge and impressive work, and it's my continuing pleasure to write the foreword of the latest edition. As I say, this edition comes out for 2021, and he's again explaining basically what some of the changes are, and where there are a few changes in the previous editions. That's actually initially the introduction. Then you've actually got a preface from the general editor, which also continues talking specifically about the changes. It's an impressive feature of the work that it is its width of coverage, says Professor Lowe. There are 30 chapters dealing with not just the obvious, but a lot of other important areas. And if we just turn to the contents, you'll see what I mean. There's a lot in it. These pages are very thin, but you can see the chapters as you go through. There's a lot of detail in the 30 chapters. I'm not going to go through all of them. Pensions are covered, for instance, international adoption, affidavits, as we still call them in some areas, then judicial collaboration, and then towards the end we've got FGM, which is a very important area, and the future, and then there's a checklist right at the end, a formal checklist, and then you've got supporting materials, which is including the legislation which is set out there, and then you've got, that's domestic legislation, then of course you've got international legislation, and you've got in total 37 different appendices. There's no shaded area in this, but you should be able to find things quite easily, depending on what you're actually looking for. But you can see in the top there, the paragraph numbering is always at the top, so you've obviously got page numbering, but you should be able to find what you're looking for quite quickly. As I say, it's The only thing I did notice about this was that the pages are very thin. It's a heavy book, but it's not as thick as the previous edition. So what do we say about this? Well, family lawyers who are at all globally minded are likely, as the world starts to open up again after almost 2 years of the COVID pandemic, to find themselves interested in and involved in international family law. Now, I can say that as a practitioner myself, that there quite often these days will be an international element, whether it's European or whether it's much wider than that. And again, it's to countries which are part of the convention or not part of the convention. And of course, the big problem is always language, and that is going to be a problem whatever you deal with. And of course, because you may be interested in international family law, and that being the case, it's almost certainly the position that practitioners will be a lot more than just merely interested in this new 6th edition of the work from Professor Hodson, but and of course there are 17 expert contributors. They'll be interested from probably a much wider point of view, because when I first started at the bar, it was a very different place from where it is today, and we are today talking about a global community in a way which we weren't talking about in the past. Now, writing in the foreword, Professor Nigel Lowe, who many of you will know probably from your student days, he's an emeritus professor of law at Cardiff University. He reiterates the point made in previous editions of this work, that as so many practitioners now deal with international family law work, it can no longer be considered a distinct specialisation. And he's absolutely right about that, because distinct or not, family law in general is a challenging area of law requiring specialist skills. And they are, to my mind, in terms of vocational skills, they are special because you've got a delicate balance with the clients. And remember, not just with your own client, but with the spouse on the other side and the children. So therefore you can see there are a lot, apart from that's just basic stuff, but of course there are lots of other areas. But you certainly need specialist skills. Sensitivity and knowledge are also very important aspects, and it indicates that international family law in particular is an area which requires further enrichment of the skills you have, because you're dealing with people whose first language is not English. And of course, let me quote here, the enduring strength of this work, says Lowe, is that it provides practitioners with a basic point of reference across the whole international family law field. And fortunately, it's squarely aimed at the practitioner and is replete with good practical advice. And as most lawyers, I think, will agree, the key value of the book is that the plan is for this particular edition was to produce it not merely after the UK's departure from the European Union, but after the 1st of January 2021. That would be the morning after we had left the EU, quote, and in all elements of law. But even this proved too early, as we've all known, because nothing about Brexit has been easy at all. And for a number of reasons explained in the text, the actual publication date was moved to the middle of the year. So this came out in the middle of 2021, and I'm recording it in the autumn, this book. So the topicality at the date is unassailable. And as I say, at the moment, we're still emerging from what has been a really dreadful pandemic. We don't know what the future will hold for us, but at least we have books like this which will help us. I think another point that's worth mentioning here, is more notable about the book, is that it presents a useful compendium of expertise and comment from its erudite contributors, 17 of them. And Lowe points out too that its breadth of coverage includes such issues as divorce. And again, today, people just don't get married in one particular place, they're going all over the place. And you'll be amazed, I'm certainly amazed, at where they can find places to get married and to whom. So it's amazing. You've then got same-sex marriage, you've got cohabitation arrangements, which are of themselves special, overseas divorce in addition, then child abduction, which is of course very important for child arrangement orders and of course the criminal sanctions, international adoption, and of course much more, including chapters on Islamic law, which I think is inevitable because my practice is predominantly involved with the Muslim faith and with dealing with problems where English law applies, but the parties actually are Muslims. They are sometimes very strong followers of Islam, and they therefore must be accorded the recognition that we give, which is that we will try to help where we can. Although, of course, as I'm sure I speak to the converted here, we always try to get the parties to deal with the matters themselves without having to force orders on them. I've had to do that recently where we've not got agreement, and it is much more difficult because you've then got the problem of explaining, especially when there's an international setting, how the common law and how the statutes and the procedures actually operate. What we've also got in this book, which I found quite interesting, is matters such as pensions, trusts, cross-border dispute resolution and immigration issues are covered, and of course the most urgent and the most sensitive of all, forced marriage and FGM, both of which are extremely difficult to deal with. Obviously one will have one's own opinions, but of course forced marriage and FGM impact specifically on women, and I will make it very clear that FGM is totally unacceptable. It is a very serious criminal assault on a female, and it must be recognised as such. It's got nothing to do with anything other than an assault occasioning grievous bodily harm, and it's as simple as that. Now, having said that, the book tries its best to give you some indication of what the law is and how we resolve these matters as much as we can when it's in an international setting. Let me conclude by saying whatever the subject, the relevant chapters cover in this particular book, they cover the areas with a thoroughness, a clarity and a depth of understanding, and they offer us as practitioners a consistent focus on recent changes in law and practice. Now, I would normally use the family law practice, that's the red book there, I've got another copy down there. I would normally use that for a lot of the work I do, but for the international practice, this work is important to refer to as well. So in short, it's a work of reference with no practitioner in international family law who should be without it, because it is a book that you do need, and I think it's actually quite a nice complement to the red book, which I'm just going to pick up here. This is the 2021 red book, and this is the 2021 international book. Now, these books together will give you everything you need. I'm saying that this is basically the main book for us in England and Wales, but this book, of course, is also extremely useful when it comes to overseas matters. Let's just have one last look at it. There's the front and the side, and if I just open it up in the middle, you can see the structure. So it's the house style, again, very much of LexisNexis family law. You can see the paragraph numbering. Then what you've got is you've got the notes included in each of the paragraphs. You've got the paragraphs then you've got the notes. That's how you can find things, and obviously you have to refer by cross-reference to the index at the back, which you've got there. And as I said, the front, I did find the index at the front, where again it's by paragraph numbering. You can see the index at the front is also very helpful. The paragraph is the chapter number, then the actual relevant paragraph itself. So chapter 16 is 16.1 and so on. So you should be able to find what you're looking for. Obviously international agreements are covered, international legislation rather. There are substantial tables of cases, and you've also got a whole series of right at the beginning, quite practical information, because it starts off with introduction and case practice management, and a lot of the information that's given here is common sense, which is something that we all have as practitioners, but it's always useful to have something like this just to think, well, I missed something, is there something I need? And I think this book will give it to you, and of course likewise with its sister. So thank you to LexisNexis. Thank you to David Hodson very much indeed, and of course Anthony Clear and his people. We rely on the contributors because they're the people who make the law. And without having these books, it would be much more difficult. So a big thank you to everybody involved. Bye-bye.